raised us up, all of us alone. You know what I mean? So we never had a father really. My brothers were my father figure. So what I saw them do, I knew that I was going to follow in their footsteps. So it came to a time where they were dealing drugs and stuff, and I was about maybe 12, 13 years old, and I remember that they found out that I was selling drugs and doing drugs. I was stealing their stuff, and so they found out, and they said, well, if you're going to steal our stuff and not give us the money, you might as well start selling for us. You know what I mean? So I started
at 12 years old.
Yeah, so at 12 years old, man. So they started handing me stuff. I started with marijuana, then it gradually just went to cocaine, and then from cocaine went to methamphetamine, from methamphetamine to heroin, and just kept going. And so they kind of that was our lifestyle, that was our income, really. We were young, we kind of had jobs, but we didn't have jobs. It was just a front to do what we were doing. And so I remember just growing up, and in that same time, I remember that gangs started coming into kind of where I lived. In that time, gangs were already there, but gangs really started, like the people that I knew, and it was kind of crazy, because there was when all this started, there was one gang there, and then another group came from California, and they started kind of beefing. And I remember I kind of, all the people that were there from the first gang that was there, all those people were my friends. They were all my friends, people that I went to school with, people that I knew, I grew up with since junior high, and all this stuff. Well, once these other guys came in, I kind of clicked more with the other guys that had just barely came in. So basically, all my rivals that I had were all my friends that I had back in the day. Growing up, so it was kind of a rough time, man, because I knew these guys, I grew up with these guys, but at the same time, they were not from the same neighborhood that I was from. So if we saw each other, it was beef. We either tried to shoot each other, we tried to do whatever, and it was just crazy how the enemy had us. You know what I mean? It was just really wild, man, and wild times in that time. And I just remember that I was selling drugs. I was really heavy into drugs, selling drugs, going to Mexico, coming back from Mexico, selling drugs, and pushing a lot of drugs, man, for my brothers. And then I finally just separated from brothers and just started doing my own thing, because now I knew people that I had met, So then I started pushing a lot of drugs with my neighborhood. And so we were going to California, we were going to Mexico, in and out, all these guys would go to prison, come back out, and come back out with more people, more connections and things like that. So we were just getting bigger and bigger. But within that time, I remember the Lord always had his hand on me. I believe that the Lord always had his hand on me, because I'm not that, nobody's a perfect criminal. Nobody can be this perfect person, but the Lord always had his hand on me, because I know the situations that I would get into, there would be no other way. There can't be no other way of how I made it out of situations and stuff. But I ended up catching a case in 97. In 97, I remember I caught a case, and I went to prison for 9 years. And I got to prison, and I remember I got there, and it's not like you make a name for yourself in the street because you do all these things and stuff, and once you go to prison, you start back over. You go back to the bottom. You're a new fish. You come in, and you got to work your way back up to the top, and so
how old were you? About how old were you when you went to prison?
I was 20.
Now, did you go to jail anytime before prison, or was that your very first experience?
I had gone to jail, but I beat my cases. So that's why I say the Lord always had his hand on me for some, even though I was doing bad, I know that he had his hand on me, because I should have done a lot more time than I had. So I remember I went to prison. I was 20 years old, and I walked in there. Once I walked in there, it was just like I was back on the streets, because most of the people that were in there were the ones that were getting busted before I got there. So they were all my friends already. So, they already had established our name. They had established who we were. But still, I had to start at the bottom. And I remember going to the hole. We'd get in riots and get in fights, and we'd go to the hole, man. We'd constantly go to the hole. And when you're in that lifestyle of gangs, I didn't join a gang. A lot of people go to prison and they end up joining gangs in prison. I came in as a gang member, so I was already marked. As soon as I walked in, I was already marked by the cops. I was already marked by the inmates. We already had beef with people. You know, it was just a lot of tension on the yard all the time. I remember walking in and I didn't know anything, you know, when I first walked in, but the first person that I walked into was one of my rivals from the streets. So right away, I was like on the defense. Like I was like, okay, I'm walking in. I'm in sandals. And this guy's in shoes. Oh man, it's gonna be crazy. So he just looked at me. He said, "Hey, come, don't do anything. I know that you want to move on me, but go to the yard and I'll have my people talk to us. You know, we'll talk." So I ended up going out to the yard, and that's when they kind of explained to me everything, all the rules and the things that I needed to know. And at that, I didn't know.
So y'all actually got rules in the prison.
Oh, they got so many rules and politics and all kinds of stuff in prison, man. I'm telling you that once you go in, it's a whole different world. It's totally different, man, than the outside. And that was another thing for me, is that I knew that once I went to prison, I knew that I had to disassociate myself with the outside world, because this new place that I was in was my new home for the time being, right? For the almost 10 years that I had to do, right? So I remember getting there, like I said, and get to the yard, and they told me, hey, these are the rules. This is what happens here. We get along. You know, this is our, you know, we're the south side car, there's the north side, and, you know, the brothers and the whites, you know, we run with. Yeah, it was just a bunch of rules, just tons of rules, and once you get into prison too, man, it's you got to know what you got to know your location. You got to stick with your people no matter what. You know, you can have friends before you went to prison. You can have, you know, white friends. You can have black friends. You can have all these kind of friends when you get to prison. But before you get to prison, but once you get to prison, you got to run with your own people only. You know, so it was really kind of segregated. There was rules. You couldn't cross certain lines. You know, if you cross that line without permission, you know, you're liable to getting stabbed. You know, there was just a lot of rules. You don't go to the restroom by yourself. You take somebody else with you. You know, there was just a lot of things that you had to know. And if you break them, that's another thing. If you break them, your own people punish you. Your own people would discipline you. You know what I mean? Because if you break those rules, then, you know, we're looking like we don't know what we're doing. You know what I mean? So there was just a lot of politics, like, and stuff. So I remember doing them 9 years, and I remember starting from the bottom, like, and going to the hole and stuff. And like I said, going to riots and having riots and stuff. I ended up in the hole one time for 18 months in a single